I'm just going to jump right into the question. Chris, my first question is towards you. So you know that this has become more or less the era of highly publicized data breaches, which is affecting reputation, which is flashed all over the news. And it's altogether a big dinner conversation and not the pretty kind. So in cases such as these, what are some guardrails that security leaders should keep in place when building out their infosec programs in order to, I would not say to be breach free, but at least to increase their odds of avoiding a security breach?
First, I would start with ensuring that they have different protocols in place for tagging data, because the only way to start to protect the data is to identify the data. Many organizations have moved to the cloud and they just brought their data there. They never tagged it. They never added sensitivity labels to it. So DLP programs are struggling to really identify which data should be protected. So that would be the first step. The second step is really to teach your stakeholders how to tag the data so that it's properly tagged. And as you start to create your applications, making sure that you're not just openly sharing S3 buckets, you're not just openly sharing APIs that have access to data. Those would be some of the other recommendations.
Right. And Aaron, do you have anything to add to it?
From my experience, a lot of what I would do is ensure that all your development side is clean, as far as just during programming, you can insert things that are just stupid in all regards. Just allow your network to be breached, and you can assure that these things are not in the code when you're actually implementing your projects into production. So things like passwords, etc., you need to make sure these are not in your GitHub repositories in various sectors.
Okay. I also, seen that, and this has come from many security leaders as well, right? It is more about practices that you implement, commonsensical practices that actually increases your odds of success. So, which brings me to my second question, which is, in order to make it apparent that these are commonsensical things where security is actually just basic sense, cybersecurity training is something that needs to be implemented across the organizations, especially for non-tech workforce who do not understand the ramifications of it as much as we would like them to. And it does have a get this done or else mentality to it, And in how can security leaders approach this training and awareness, campaigns in a way that not only communicates the importance of it, but also makes it easy to understand, or like makes it more discernible than just giving a bunch of documents and checklists and saying, here's cybersecurity. This is going to be your life now.
Sure. Yeah, so cybersecurity training is obviously going to be important regardless of where you are in the world, what you're doing, how big your organization is. It's going to be something that's actually rather difficult for the end users, as many people in technology, even though they want to be on top of the field, they are not actually on top of the field like we are, and making them aware. And my recommendation for training would be just short little segments that allow for the users to understand it, and basically to make them aware of the various threats that we're facing in the world, in little short introduction, I guess, webinars or in-person seminars that you can actually just enjoy rather than being forced to do this. You need to ensure that your personality is shown through your projects, and so you make it fun for them.
Interesting. And when you're talking about short content pieces and such, like, have you come across concepts, or like, do you have any recommendations for things that can be addressed in this way? Anything that comes up on top of your mind?
I mean,
Sure. No, sorry, Chris.
Please go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, I mean, everything can be addressed in a short, funny way, from passwords to picking up a USB stick that's left out in the random. These are all concepts that you want to address to them, but you want to address it over time. You want to leave these little breadcrumbs throughout the years so they don't forget about it. And like Aaron was mentioning, there's companies out there that create these videos, these microburst videos, and you can create them too. And by having little pieces of video from your own leaders talking about this, it shows that it's ingrained from the top, and there's likely to be more buy-in than if it was just standard content created by a vendor and no one in your leadership is involved in it.
That's correct. I was going to say, actually, make sure your leadership is definitely aware of the situations, and that your managers throughout the system are making sure that all your employees are also aware.
So if I'm understanding it correctly, cybersecurity training is also something that requires a top-down approach, where it's the leaders, if they get it, then everyone else will.
Yes,
People tend to follow the leaders.
Exactly. When you look at it, if the leaders were not to follow the policies and procedures and stakeholders saw that, they would not have a belief that these rules are really worth it. But if your leaders are following it, they would say that it's worth it. And for example, being safe every day, making safe decisions about everything. If your leaders talk about how when they are making risk-based decisions, they're trying to do it in a safe way that does take into consideration cybersecurity, risk management, and all the other topics, and they share that as part of their thought process, then the rest of the stakeholders will see that as well.
Got it.
That's correct.
So in terms of making information efficient to be delivered, short form content works, and in order to make sure that it's easily implementable, get the top down approach, and you're good to go. All right. And anything that you'd like to add, Aaron?
No, I was just going to say what the top down approach is not necessarily the right way to say it. It's mostly just get your leadership in the way that they can actually influence the workers underneath them. It's not necessarily a top-down approach as much as just people tend to follow the leadership.
Okay, got it. I like that. That's a distinction. That's important. It's an important distinction as well. All right. So in as a security leader, and I'm sure you guys would have also been inundated with a variety of tools that keeps coming up. The most bleeding edge tools, things that are there to make your life easy, things that are made to make work faster, better, and everything. So, Chris, do you have any recommendations of tools that you have tried out that you think that you'd recommend companies to adopt to make security processes, and I'm stressing on it, to make security processes easier in organizations?
Tools to make security processes easier. I would say following a good change management approach. I know it sounds boring, but really any tool that you're looking to implement, you need to have a good change management approach to it, because the stakeholders need to see the value in why this tool is being applied, what solution it is being headed towards, and then the value that it brings. And then as you follow that change management process, if it's not delivering the value that they expected, then there's a potential rollback plan. But you have to have your stakeholders involved in that change management process so that they can validate it, versus saying, oh, here's a new tool, you have to use it, and you have no choice. Then you don't tend to get buy-in. Then you get devs that are not using the tool. They're saying, oh, it's broken, it's not reporting properly. You don't get the buy-in. So as much as people hate the change management process, it is really helpful to make change easy.
Okay.
I'll add that. Yeah, so of course we're in the life of artificial intelligence now. And even prior to that, we were experiencing machine learning with various companies. And honestly, those are the tools that I've worked with on my server side, in which the machine learning tools are incorporated into the security process, and it significantly increases your security foothold. You're able to analyze the data. The process itself, of course, analyzes the data, the machine learning, and you're able to a degree, worry less. You're not, of course, unworried. You're still making yourself extremely vigilant and ensuring all the processes are in place, but at the same time, you have a source of data that is spread throughout all the customers of these various products, and ensuring the safety of the product by utilizing the data that's spread throughout the entire world. And so you're having these security threats that are identified by another company influencing your company's decisions. So that process is significantly increasing the security capabilities of companies, small and big, actually.
Okay. And Christophe, I understand the change management aspect of it to be a significantly important detail that needs to be given attention to before we explore toolings and before we start looking at how to make things easier for us, right? In your experience as a VCSO and in your experience as a security leader, what has been some hurdles that you've had with communicating the importance, communicating the importance of change management processes, and how have you been able to achieve that and like recommend organizations to put that process in place and stick to it?
So one example of that is at my last employer, I was looking to implement a dashboarding system that was different from the one that they used. And we were working to pull reports from a variety of different systems, providing reports for a variety of different leaders and personas. And we wanted to use it as a way to automate monthly reporting. This process is a deviation from the regular process where they would get it in a PowerPoint, but it allowed them to check daily and to see the progress. Now, the challenge that came with that was when you're looking instantly at your reports and you have reports coming from various different systems, you might have deviations from systems because they're at different levels, they're at different levels of granularity. So you have to, as part of the change management process, you have to explain this report gives this data at this level, this other report will give this data at this lower granularity, but it gets it from different systems at different timings. So they won't exactly align up. Because you're a department lead, this is the report that most aligns to you. This one should be the one that you're following. And then the lower report for the engineers might be more left facing. So it allows them to see potential defects that are coming into the system and allows them to address it quickly. And that won't align with a top end report, but it still allows them to see how things are being manufactured or created in the software development lifecycle and how they can address them before they get to production.
And that's interesting that you've figured out that they used to be comfortable with an uncomfortable system, and like shifting them from that into something good for them is a painful process, but it's worth it. So that's nice. I quite like that. All right. I have one more question before we go into the Q&A tabs, right? And it's for, so Aaron, when companies are reaching the hypergrowth stage, and, I'm defining hypergrowth stages as, companies that work with multi-geo in multi-geo operations, they have a dedicated security team, they have a larger ticket values for customers, deal cycles take longer. In these companies, how can security leaders look at, simplify security processes? Like if you're a leader who's handling a 2,000, 5,000 employee company across multiple geos, you're dealing with hybrid workspaces and have changing governance laws across EU and US and India and APAC. So how do you simplify the madness? And do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, I actually messaged Christophe last night about this question and said I didn't like it because actually you can't really simplify the process. However, standardization, automation, network segmentation, various cloud security if you're using a cloud platform, centralized logging, monitoring, vendor consolidation will do it. Ensure that your security is integrated into your development lifecycle, like Christophe just said. And basically just automate well, I already said automate, but bring your processes into automation and ensure that your teams are all ingrained with these processes. And stay on top of things. You cannot let things fall through the cracks. You have to ensure your network is properly managed at all times. Otherwise, you're going to see that a risk isn't going to be in place in your system. And really, you just need to make sure that everything is known in all aspects of the job market, and that all your employees are capable of identifying the problems that we're facing in this world today, because we're facing quite a few, as you see every day.
All right.
I would like to add to that. And this comes back to the change management. Before there's any major regulation change, there's usually a long ramp up period before that happens. That allows the organization to look at the requirements from the legal and regulation perspective, see what they need to do within their organization, and make those changes ahead of time. They can also see that it's not applicable to them, because most of these regulations, they'll say, if you're an organization that makes 50,000 or more and is active in California, then you would apply to this regulation, for example, CDPR. If you're below that, then you don't apply. So making sure that you read the fine print and you really understand how that applies to your business. That would be the main thing. I see oftentimes organizations and individuals see things like GDPR and go, "Oh, we're gonna get hit. We're gonna be applicable to this." But if you're not directly serving citizens from that organization, then you might not apply. But it might be handy to have those privacy controls in your system as a precautionary item if it doesn't cost too much, because other countries might look to adopt those similar standards, and then it's easier for you to then adjust to those in the future, and you don't have to be scrambling then.
Interesting. So it's more like a prevention is better than cure kind of mentality. Got it.
Well, and let me add to that, and given your last statement, prevention not being a cure, or being the cure, you also have to ensure that if you are hit, that you have a prevention plan or a incident response plan that will ensure that your corporation can get back on its feet after something happens.
Got it. I think that's important. That's important to keep in mind.
It is an important one.
an
Okay.
IR plan that is tested before something happens so that you can ensure that you can recover.
Oh,
Important as well.
that's Christophe, and actually that's interesting, and I'm curious to know, is there like a framework that you have for an incident response plan that you usually use, or you prescribe, that leaders need to know about? Best practice.
NIST has one, ISO has one. They both have different frameworks that you can use, but it really boils,
the organization, in my opinion.
yeah, it boils down to what are the critical systems in your organization that allow it to function? What are the processes that could cause it to fail? And then being able to be resilient to them failing. And if they do fail, how to get them recovered and back up and going. That's really where it goes down to. For companies that have been around a long time, sometimes tracing down those processes is hard, but it's worth the effort.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for explaining that. I think that was important, and I will don't worry, people on LinkedIn, people on YouTube, we are going to be sharing this recording, so you will have access to that, and I will even make sure that we post about this on LinkedIn, sharing the 3 important questions that you need to answer while building your incident response plan. Now we get to the Q&A that came in. Q&As that came in. There's just 3 left, and I am aware that we have around 10 minutes left. So let's get to the questions. The first one: what are some common misconceptions about building a cybersecurity culture within an organization?
Program does not equal culture. Just because you have a program in place doesn't mean that you have a security culture in place. To have it extend past having a program, you have to really have it be part of your day-to-day activities. Decisions being made. Is this a safe decision? What are the risks around this decision? And really have leaders and stakeholders have it be something that's always top of mind. That's where it becomes a culture, because a culture is a set of practices that a group of people do. And if it's just a program, it's a policy that's in a book that lays there and collects dust.
That was actually a pretty good answer. I can't really have anything to add to that.
All right.
Christophe hit that. It is definitely a culture, and you have to ensure that your coworkers and everybody is on the same page at all times.
Okay. I think there is, Rob has written a comment which is interesting, which is EU GDPR requires notifications within 72 hours of breaches where individuals are at risk. These are regulated failures and are published with, are published with financial penalties, and often the pain of not knowing what to do is worse than the actual breach. Well, that's dire, but that also is the truth of it, which is good. Like, rather know what's the next step than falter and not know what to do. I think I'll just move to the next one, which is how can organizations encourage, how can organizations encourage a culture of reporting security incidents without fear of repercussions? This I want to know.
They can't worry about the fear of repercussions. Making people aware of the risks are always going to be the most important thing in the security world now. Obviously, reporting has been made to where it is almost a necessary thing, if not a legal requirement in many countries. And making your threats known, making your risks known, making the breaches known, all of them help make awareness known around the world. And so you're going to have to always ensure that your security culture is being adopted, and that basically that everybody is aware of what we're facing in this world today, because we are constantly exposed to countless risks. And we're this year alone an astronomical sum of money that's being just sent to these criminal actors, which is horrible. It's basically creating a bad enterprise, well, a malicious enterprise in all sorts. And these companies, well, these organizations, as they're called, can then utilize that money to expand even further. And basically, we're just experiencing the worst of the internet. Let's put it that way. And people need to know that.
So from, if I'm getting it correctly, to be unafraid of sharing security incidents with your superiors, you have to understand that it's not about fear. It's not about getting caught and having a bad name with the boss. It's much bigger than that. It's much more dire than that.
Yeah, it's extremely. Go ahead, Chris.
I would even add incentives to it. I was at a conference earlier this year, and a construction company, what they do on a regular basis is they encourage their stakeholders to submit, and then on a quarterly basis, they'll have an event, like a little party, and they'll announce the winner of someone that submitted a spear phishing or a malicious email or something like that. And they shared it in. If it was real, if it wasn't real, they still get entered. And then they can win a gift card. They can win a day off. So just really encouraging them to submit things like that allows it to not, they don't fear that they're submitting it. Another way is really encouraging people to analyze the messages and to see where the faults are. That way, they know for themselves at home when you're looking at their messages at home. Because if you could take the practices that you're teaching your stakeholders and they can use it in their home life, it's going to be that much more valuable to them. And then it's going to protect your organization that much more, because now these aren't just things that they have to do at work. This is something that they do as part of a life skill.
Okay, I think we are at the clock. And actually, we have one last question, which is about.
I like that last question.
Yeah. It's about your thoughts on the future of cybersecurity and emerging trends. I think it's broad enough.
I'll let Aaron go first.
Well, my thoughts on the future of cybersecurity is it's going to continue to be necessary. Of course, it's going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to see evolutions in it. However, we're going to see the quantum world emerge. We're going to see basically artificial intelligence be incorporated heavily into it. And well, it's not going to kill any jobs. We're going to continue to have jobs. They're just going to be different. We're going to have to evolve. We're going to have to see where the world goes. Obviously, quantum computers have the potential to break cryptography, which is a fear of everybody right now. And that's something that we're going to continue having to evolve these algorithms and ensure that our cryptography is secure enough. Basically, we're going to have to use quantum cryptography and all sorts. And in my opinion, the best method to do that would be artificial intelligence or quantum artificial intelligence, and to generate your cryptography for you. That may not be the best or most liked solution, but it is most likely going to be the case, unfortunately, or fortunately. So, Chris?
And I'll take the opposite approach to this. I recently heard from some individuals within academia that over the past 2 quarters, there's been less enrollment of individuals into cybersecurity careers, into infosec careers, into STEM careers, which will become a challenge for the workforce. So what we really need to do is introduce STEM and safe use of technology as an integral part of the educational system, not just an extra class that they have to do. No, it has to be integrated in every class and everything that they do. They have to be able to use technology safely from the time that they enter school to the time that they leave school. So these phishing and training, this is something that they should have already mastered as a life skill, to use computers safely, so that when they do enter the workforce, this is something that's learned. So even if we have less potential cybersecurity individuals in the workforce, we have a workforce that's already trained and aware on cybersecurity skills and how to defend themselves against it themselves.
Okay, and I think that's a good mark to conclude this, because education is as important as ever, especially when it comes to having a direct impact on safety and security. So with that, we are concluding this webinar. Thank you so much for tuning in, be it here or LinkedIn or YouTube.